Everybody, welcome to Shoot and Show. Now, for our loyal listeners, that's some new intro music, and it's because it's a brand new series that we're running. So I want to welcome you to Shoot in Footwear Leadership Series. This is powered by OrthoLite, our friends at OrthoLite. So in this special series, we sit down with top executives from the biggest footwear brands to explore their journey, their leadership philosophies, and culture shaping their organizations. We're focused on like their career defining moments, how they look at trend, how they look at the marketplace, how they deal with folks inside their organization as well as outside their partners, etc. And so, it's been about 5 years since we did something similar during this thing called COVID. I don't know if people remember, but we had similar conversations where we were asking leaders how to navigate crisis, how to look at what they can control, Matt, and what they can't control. Like, how do we lean into our philosophies to kind of guide us through challenging times? Today, obviously, thank God we're not in the midst of COVID like we were, but the challenges and the hits keep coming again and again and again. And so as we start this out, a big thank you to OrthoLite for making this series possible. They are a trusted partner to over 550 leading footwear brands. OrthoLite continues to elevate comfort and performance across the industry, and they've allowed us. They're helping financially support these conversations that we have, so that we can bring these to life and help the industry. So, Matt, as we kick off this leadership series number 1, who do we have today that we are going to engage with?
I'm so excited about this series, Andy, as you articulated. It's different conversations than we normally have, but maybe some similar things. And Susie Kuhn is here. She's our first guest. She's the president of the Active Group brands at Wolverine Worldwide. And Susie, I want to welcome you to the Shoe and Show Leadership Series. And just one look at your roster of experience on LinkedIn it's a who's who of great, amazing global brands. And so we want to welcome you and ask you, what is your shoe story? What was your journey through the industry? Walk us through how you got to this current role at Wolverine Worldwide.
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me here. It's great to help you kick off this new series. So I really appreciate that. I've been a retailer. I kind of call myself a retailer merchant for like 30 years, but the shoe part of my story started when Nike was really looking to get more impactful on the apparel side. And I had been an apparel buyer, an apparel merchant for sport and retailers. And I got brought over to add in merchandising prowess to Nike. And at that moment, once I got in there, I realized, apparel inside of Nike is going to be knowing about footwear and helping make apparel feel like footwear. Great franchise management, really good launch mentality. And that kind of started my career. And I found it so fascinating to think about things rather than in collections and seasonal flow, but rather in launch and really impactful moments that the consumer can grab onto and then become a loyalist again. So my shoe story really started with Nike, and then it just gravitated towards, I got to go through that same process of discovery in all these different geographies over the year, living in China, living in Europe, and watching consumers kind of operate the same way, but differently because of their cultural interactions, their consumer backgrounds, what motivated them in their purchase, whether it was utility or status or innovation. And it just kind of created this really cool journey in which I've gotten to see all these different consumers react with our awesome industry through some really cool brands. So
that's awesome. Let's talk a bit about that, because as part of this leadership series, we're not asking about sales. We're not talking about necessarily the nuts and bolts of operation, but like how we do it better. How do we think about engaging those consumers? How do we think about motivating and leading employees in this kind of dynamic age where we have this weird mixture of we need more personal interaction than ever, but also we're using AI more than ever, and ChatGPT and these kind of weird new technologies. And one thing I'm interested in particular was you were talking about like trend within culture, like beyond just having the experience to like know. And I think obviously you have to have the experience to sit in different positions to see that. But like, how do you think about understanding customers in this kind of weird digital world that I don't really even know what we even frame it as, what we even call this kind of artificial age, maybe? You've used that in the past, but how do you think about trend and engaging consumers in this ever-changing environment?
It's a great question, and it's always relevant. And, no one's going to have a silver bullet answer for that, but
Yeah.
it's more of how you incorporate it on top of all the other kind of eras of information that have layered on over the course of my career. Like every few years, you get something new and disruptive that you need to absorb into consumer insights. If I look at like me at Wolverine today and why I'm here, part of it is that there's riches and niches. One of my friends in retail said that in a panel that I was on once. And that's what AI and social commerce has allowed us to do, is actually connect with niches more. And so when I look across Wolverine's portfolio, what got me so excited about joining Chris Huffnagel and the executive team here is that we have these core brands that cross over all these different categories that historically, because we weren't in this AI information age, they were kind of put in separate boxes, right? Work was work, outdoor was outdoor, running and sport was running and sport. And now you have this incredible crossover because we get all of this data that tells us, wow, this consumer is doing this and this. Why have we separated them for so long? So when I look at Wolverine's portfolio in particular, that ability to use our innovation and our best in class product to connect across customers that might never consider themselves a hiker, they might call themselves a runner who likes to go outdoors. We have that ability to do that now. And I think that's what kind of AI allows us to unlock. There's a host of other things, whether you talk about the design community, there's a million ways, but purely from mapping great brand strengths to marketplace opportunity for growth, which ultimately is my focus, that unlocks a lot to say, let's not keep walls up that might have been there 10 years ago, but we know better now. There really aren't walls in the eyes of the consumer, so we have to operate that way. So it just keeps you thinking about growth differently and how to apply your strengths into that marketplace mentality.
Let me ask you about this, Susie. Chris is a dear friend of mine. He's on our board. What I love about his leadership is he's just honest. And as you started this journey in the Wolverine turnaround, he just was very upfront about this. These are our goals. We need to do these things. This might feel a little painful, but it's going to unleash this growth. And we're seeing the fruits of that labor as we speak, particularly with Merrell and Saucony. We're seeing the street respond accordingly. Talk to us about that process of a rebirth, if you will, kind of a relaunch of some iconic brands that we know and love, particularly when it comes to Merrell and Saucony. Walk us through that journey.
Yeah, well, from a leadership perspective, Chris's transparency, vision, and just straight talk about what Wolverine needs to do is absolutely one of the key reasons that I'm here. I think it's exemplary the way that the company has moved from a very difficult position to a stabilization mode into transformation. And now I get to sit here and talk about growth. And that's remarkable in the amount of time in our industry that's happened. I just look at, the earnings call that we had last week. We exceeded expectations in every single financial metric. And that's literally the result of tremendous rigor, tremendous capability, tremendous grit by the team that's here, led by Chris. Within the active group, when I look at Saucony and Merrell, clearly those two are leading where we're headed next. Saucony is just on a roll right now, a deliberate roll, right? That was done very strategically in terms of, we know what our product is, we know how good it is. I get so excited when I see moments like the Boston Marathon and, the top 3 of 10 most worn shoes in that race was Saucony. That's an incredible outcome that just speaks to, we have incredible product that can lead. But then on the flip side, I watch what our marketing and our brand teams are doing to connect it directly into energy, with the work we're doing with J-Tips and the work that we're doing with Silo and Paris Fashion Week, where we launched that. And it is that unique differentiation of really being able to connect authentically, kind of lifestyle energy with hardcore performance running. That's going to be the unlock. And so I look at Saucony's growth as almost a template for how we need to think about being authentic to our heritage, building beautiful, innovative product that the consumer chooses because it's good. And then Merrell's following suit. Our product pipeline from Merrell is incredible right now. We're starting to get our brand heat moving. Going to see good things there. And really, Merrell's had 3 quarters now of consecutive growth, which, considering the outdoor industry's had a tough roll, but we've been able to rise above that. We've maintained our number one market share in hike, but more importantly, we're picking up points and share in trail running as that crossover happens with, beautiful product. The MTL Adapt is just great product that says we're moving in a new direction. It's lighter, it's faster. So the product pipeline is going to drive Wolverine for, I would hope, in perpetuity, because that's where we focus and we live. But our ability to drive growth is going to come to how we interact with the market, use all this data, and really get after our portfolio's opportunity. But Wolverine's on a roll because of Chris's leadership, and Saucony and Merrell are more than happy to lead that with everything that the team's doing.
Let me ask you about leadership regarding people. So you've worked obviously in the US, North America market, led teams there. You've led teams in China and Asia. You led teams in Europe. And I was on a metro one day, and I'm so used to like government speak, there's all these acronyms and there's, all these different things. And I look over and I see a guy who is in the symphony orchestra reading sheet music. And I just thought, oh my God, like, that's a completely different language I have no idea about, right? So that, like, the communication and crossover of these different cultures in your career, how have you been able to communicate well with people and engaged and motivate and lead them? Like, what are some tips and ideas? Maybe what's your leadership style?
Yeah, I mean, leadership style evolves over the years, because if you have a level of self-awareness, which is really the only way to be successful, is you keep evolving with what the needs of the team that you get the opportunity to lead need from you. And as I moved around, especially cross-culturally, that first few years that I moved to China was a bit of just an awakening of being like, okay, I have to adapt. This is about behavioral modification to be effective in the environment that I'm in today, not about the success in a different environment that got me to get the opportunity to get the role. So I think, the baseline answer of what you're asking is this constant self-awareness about how I'm being received in any room that I'm in. Am I being effective, right? Nothing says that when you start in a new company, you do get a host of new acronyms, and no one hands you like a Rosetta Stone to figure it out.
Hopefully not sheet music. Unless you can read the sheet music, then that's fine. But
I can read a little music, but not to that level. But no one hands you the Rosetta Stone. So I become between China, between Europe, and being American and grounded in North America in terms of who I am. Nomenclature is so important. And so one of the key elements of leadership is to listen in those first, few months of acclimation, to be like, what words is everyone coding around, and making sure that if I want to change the words, which as a leader, you consciously have to like redefine some words just so it feels like a new day. So people don't default to maybe the things that are no longer working. I'm just very conscious about language. And I spent a lot of time with my peer group on the executive team, because there's a lot of new of us, right? Well, Chris has changed up our executive team. We're all figuring out language with each other. And so I think language is one of the most important elements of, getting a high level vision through the whole organization. And, my hope would be you could ask anyone on the team below me, down to an amazing young talent who has their first role out of college or design school, and they would use the same words as Chris. I mean, that is the goal of our company right now. And that's the culture of this make every day better, which is kind of our mantra and our value system that we've unrolled to the organization. And so language has been everything to me. Self-awareness from a leadership perspective, and just being constantly aware of whether or not I'm resonating with the people I'm talking to. And then understanding that sometimes being an aggressive American isn't always the thing that gets the best conversation going. Those were my international side of things that taught me, going from North America, that we like talkers, to China, where the first person who talks is, historically not the smartest. So you have to kind of adapt. And, I'd like them to think I'm smart.
Why do you think I lead off the show? Matt just sits in the background and lets me take.
Very smart, Andy. I think it was a really good call. Oh. And then Europe, which is much more straightforward, especially in Netherlands. So it's been a really good ride, but self-awareness has driven me through the whole thing, and adaptation.
That's some fascinating analysis, Susie. I mean, you're right. Each of these cultures has a different way in which they approach things, and there's so many nuances. And unless you go and travel there, and in your case, live there, it's hard to pick that up. Let's talk about how you locate talent. And when you're thinking about it, you've talked about what helps you be a good leader, self-awareness and adaptability and some humility, it sounds like, but also just an understanding of what needs to happen and agility, if you will. But what about when you seek out talent, and particularly in a global marketplace, and you're serving global consumers, and you're sourcing product globally, and you're working, but you're in West Michigan, which is a very Americana kind of place, right? So there's this mix. How do you seek talent, and what are some of the criteria you think about when you're hiring people?
There's a few things. I think one, it's you have to learn the place you're in and what's needed at this moment. Like I've never gone into a role and not found great capability. Might be in pockets, might not be fully, unlocked in the organization, but there's always capability, there's always talent, there's always institutional knowledge that's valuable, and there's also always something missing that's going to fuel the next phase of growth or change. And so the first thing before I look for talent is understand what does the organization need for this particular time horizon, for the set of challenges or opportunities that are ahead. And then, you turn out and you say, I have to build a collective against that outcome. And I believe in a collective resume. I think early in my career, I probably saw a lot of teams built on the same resume over and over again because that was the archetype of what would be successful. And I think over time, you realize that it's those diverse teams, cognitive and otherwise, that actually tend to come together, have better healthy tension, and tend to get better outcomes. So I definitely try to fill the gaps, the things I don't have that might be important to kind of the ecosystem of what drives good cross-functional pieces. Teamwork, awareness are the things I look for. And then for me, sometimes I look for quiet, more maybe introversion a little bit, thinkers. I also think you got to balance that. There's a great book, Quiet, that I read years ago as I got onto a team, got to China, and then I realized I have a lot of introverts on my team, and I'm such an extrovert, I don't want to dominate them. And so I read that book, Quiet, and it made me realize the value of adjusting my leadership to make sure that that type of diversity is allowed in, and that you really unlock a lot of great brain talent with people who maybe sit more quietly but need to be pulled out. So for me, it's kind of finding the balance between all those elements, different personalities, different experiences, different core capabilities, and making sure like you've made a really good cocktail. That's kind of the way I view leadership. And then you just use your network to plug into people that might have some experience with the exact challenge you're up against. So a little bit of puzzle making there, but that's the way I think about it. Very situational.
That's very interesting because I think that that takes a lot of work because we can get so stuck in doing the daily work, right? We can sit in a room, we can look at a product, we can make decisions, we can execute, we can do these things. But to your point, what you're talking about is like observing, like how are these folks interacting? How are they working together and collaborating to accomplish the goal? Back to your point on language, do people understand what we're talking about? Are we all seeing from the same hymn sheet as we go forward? Are there some critical thinkers in there, like challenging the notion too, right? Like respectfully saying, maybe we should go in a different direction, right? So it seems like as much as it is important to like execute, and I know it's really hard in your all's roles as a public company because you're looked at quarterly, right? Like you got to hit these numbers quarterly, but to do that, it really is sitting in a room and thinking about people and their emotions and their motivations and making sure they have what they need to kind of accomplish these goals we set out for them. And I think that's where this series in particular is like what I'm really passionate about is like thinking about our talent and getting the most out of folks and encouraging them to move it along. And that's a huge challenge and issue. And I know it's interesting you talked about like reading that book, and I see your resume, and what's impressive about it to me is not where you've been, but like the education components that you've constantly engaged with. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, like how, because to me, it looks like you're a lifelong learner. You're trying to find new ways and tools to do things better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge motivator for me. I think it's like core to who I am. I was like the kid in the corner reading growing up. I was a history major in college, throwing a little political science and literature in there as minors. But so I'm an avid reader. I tend to learn off of a page, but then I'm the first person to go out and like throw myself physically into whatever I just read. Think that makes me a little dramatic sometimes in the best way possible. But, I think that the lifelong learning thing, I remember early on, my mother was always saying to me, go get your MBA. And I'm like, I don't want to. But then I had that one job that was like, oh, if I want to keep progressing, and I'm realizing I'm really interested in business models now. I don't want to just stay in merchandising as a function. Like the business models are interesting. It's when I was in Asia. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I do need an MBA now. I need like the causal link to like, is it a natural next step for me? And when you use that to like as a motivation, you get so much more out of it. So I always tell everyone, do the educational components, because all of a sudden you realize, wow, that would be a really great way to help me get to whatever that next thing that I want to do is. So I've used it that way rather than like a well-worn path. These things tend to come to me and pop up because I get into a room and I'm like, I'm 70% lost. I like being maybe 40% lost because at least I'm still learning, but I don't like being 70% lost.
Right.
And so the 70%, when I get between that 40 and 70, I'm like, I got to go read a book. I got to go sign up for a class. I've got to go find a network that can like help me be more effective in this space. And so whether that's tiny little bit of calling someone who did this in the past, reading a book, or signing up for a course, like that, it's a good reaction. Education's a great reaction to a discovery that you have, from me anyway.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Or listen to a podcast. You can do that too.
Here we go.
Podcast.
All right. So now we're getting to a really kind of fun segment that we're doing on our leadership series now. So a big thank you to OrthoLite again for helping sponsor and launch out this series. Again, OrthoLite partners with over 550 of the world's leading footwear brands, elevating comfort and performance with every step. Fun footwear games. Matt's going to lead this one off. I think he has one in mind that he wants to kick off and discuss. But this is, again, it's a fun little segment that we like to do and see where our guest kind of lands on this. So Matt, what you got?
Right. Yeah, so we try to kind of mix things up, Susie. So my question for you: if you could only own one pair of shoes for the rest of your life, what would it be? And right now, I mean, where you sit, it's like a Saucony, a Merrell. I mean, this is like a no-win situation for you, but we're going to see the leadership that comes out of this, the listening, the agility that you can, as you answer this question. What would that shoe be?
All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm a size 41, 10 women's. I'm going to figure out between Saucony and Merrell which two have the closest height and last. I'm going to wear a left and a right and just shake it up and look creative. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to pick one. I'm not picking a child on this show. All of my teams will be watching. We just launched the Arc, the Speed Arc. In Merrell, the Mattis. It's brilliant. I've been wearing it. It's an unbelievable shoe. It's got like, I didn't know what energy return was, having not been in the hike thing before, but like once the designer explained it to me, like I can feel it. So that sneaker, or that shoe, has been on my feet a lot on weekends as I take my dog out and I'd go do some of my sports. And then I think the endorphin's amazing when you're at the airport, because I feel like I'm always late for a flight, and that extra little foam, that extra little lift, it really makes me feel like a sprinter as I run from one gate to the other, particularly at LaGuardia. So I'd probably go with our two newest innovations, right? I'd go with Endorphin and I'd go with Mattis. And I am a bit more outdoorsy than I am a marathon runner. So if you're going to force me down the lane, I think the Mattis will get a higher percentage of usage.
I like it. You can do one on each foot.
Teams.
Hey, that was a decisive answer.
Was a decisive answer.
People will be so decisive on their answers and get back and forth, and so we appreciate your decisiveness. We also appreciate you coming on today and talking a little bit about we on the show typically we'll talk about business and operations, but again, the reason why I think this is so important, critical at this time, is just the number of challenges we're facing across every part of the supply chain, and the only way through it is one part innovation and one part leadership. And we really appreciate you coming on today to share a little perspective, and we're excited to see it in action, not just quarterly, but like in the product launches that you guys are having. So as things keep going forward, we're excited to see that. And what was the shoe again? Just so folks can, what was the shoe you chose?
I chose the Mattis Arc. So it's the new Merrell Arc hike which is amazing. It's lightweight, it's fast, it looks completely different. Like it's a unique aesthetic of it. Does not look like a hike shoe, which is what we're so excited about because it's new and it's fresh, but it operates like one of the best hiking boots that you have. So that's great. So that's
Awesome.
the Mattis or the Boa Arc. And then on the Saucony side, it's the one that shows up on that finish line in marathons. It's the Endorphin. It's got all of our home technology. The team's doing phenomenal things with it. There is some new stuff coming out that I just can't bring up today, but hopefully that keeps everyone
You're teasing it out. Teasing it out.
Yeah, I gotta get
yourself back. That's like a Seinfeld episode, Susie. Thank you for that.
No problem. I'm here to entertain, Andy.
Oh, Susie, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us today. We really appreciate your perspective and like how you're leading teams and what you guys are doing at Wolverine Worldwide. Folks, that wraps up this episode, the opening episode of our leadership series. Huge thanks to Susie for joining us, to OrthoLite for helping us power these conversations. You can see our entire and hear our entire catalog of shoe and shows over the past, 9 years, Matt? Is that what it is?
9 years.
9 years?
Almost at 500 episodes.
Oh, wow. On shoeandshow.com, and this shoe leadership series will show up. You can identify it by the special music. We're also launching out a brand new website for this series so that you can find these episodes.
Shoeleaders.com, right?
Shoeleaders.com. There you go. So you can find these in quick succession to go into these like really interesting, meaningful conversations that we're hoping to have on this show. So again, thank you for listening. Until next time, new episode drops Monday. Shoeing is out.